Hello everybody, how you doing today? It's Superfiend here, and welcome back to another time-lapse video from my theme park, Whacky World. This is the second and final time-lapse video showing how I built the Lost Garden attraction, which is a kiddie coaster. It's the Dragon Coaster. And before I go into any sort of background or anything, I just want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the footage right now. This ride is where I originally got the idea of, or the method of how to make holes in the ancient civilization wall pieces. So if you watched my other time-lapse videos with the hidden temple, I created quite a few holes in the ceiling and the wall that the track kind of weaves in and out of for that ride. But this ride is where I originally got that idea. I didn't know how to do it when I was designing the hidden temple, and that was one of the things I've talked about, where when I was making the hidden temple I kind of got a creator's block and I didn't know how to proceed. So I started working on other areas of Whacky World, and this is one of the things that I worked on in that interim transition, trying to figure out how to do things, how to get things working the way I want, period. And so I built this ride while the hidden temple is kind of like half completed in the background. If the camera turns and you get a good angle, you'll see the hidden temple is back there and it's not finished. So this is where I first got this idea, or the method of how to create a hole in the wall and then disguise it. And the reason I made a hole in the wall for the Lost Gardens is because there's this really nice, you can see it very clearly there, this nice tropical and lush foliage, and there's a nice fountain structure, and the track goes in there and does a couple turns around it, which is great for a kid's coaster. But it's all enclosed in this enclosed space, and it looks really nice and it looks very attractive. It's very pleasing to the eye, and I wanted it to be visible from the pathways in the park, but I didn't want it to be super visible. I wanted it to just be a little bit visible, because again, it helps to build up the mystique, and it piques your curiosity. So the placement of the hole in the wall that I built earlier is designed specifically to pique the guests' interest, because there's going to be a major walkway of the park is going to be going by out there. So as the guests are walking along that pathway, they've actually got two really good views on that walkway. If they look in one side, they're going to be able to see the hole in the wall through some foliage that kind of makes it look more hidden. And they'll be able to see this hole, and they can see the kitty right in there. And if they look to the other side, they'll see the ancient pyramid, or the stone temple pyramid that I built as part of the hidden temple. So that pathway has two really nice viewpoints. If you look to either side of the pathway, and then as you look forward, what you see now is this Stingray coaster that I've been working on recently, and it just creates some very nice views. I'm excited to show that with you guys sometime in the next couple weeks here. I have to put that footage together and condense it down into time lapse and do the commentary. But I have all the footage. I just have to get around to processing it and stop playing things like Total War. So anyways, what we're doing right now is we are dressing up the sides of this ancient temple complex, this ancient architecture, dressing it up with the ivy from the game. That helps to give it the effect of it's old, it's been here for a long time, it's no longer maintained. The people that used to inhabit this and come here for their leisurely walks, they're gone. And the jungle foliage and the jungle brush is coming in and taking over. There's a few rocks and other bushes and things kind of scattered throughout on the floor that are distinctly different than the types of flowered plants that I put on the pillars. The idea when I was designing this was that the flowered plants that are on the pillars are what's left of the actual gardens, the gardens that would have been maintained. What's all over the floor is the natural jungle overgrowth and brush that has moved in now that the inhabitants are no longer keeping it at bay. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, if you didn't see it, the previous video for this ride, It's composed of really 3 parts. The track leaves the coaster station and it does a U-turn and goes up. It's not really a chain lift, but I'm just going to call it the lift. It goes up the lift hill and it forms a U-turn at the top, and then it goes down a drop that has a double down, and it goes through a central building that is completely enclosed. And as the track goes through there, it just goes over a couple hills, and then it enters this larger area here, which is the garden, and it does a couple turns around it, and then it goes back through the central chamber, does a couple hills, and then returns to the coaster station. And there is a block section, so it can run 2 tracks. And the idea with this is that it would have been a larger structure that the ancient civilization used, and the temple would have been used for something, and then you have the nice gardens here. And I wanted this to look really neat at night, and I had a hard time. So I put some of the torches, the skull torches, inside the temple structure. But then for the garden itself, I started putting the torches inside the actual fountain pieces, and you saw how that looked, and I thought it looked really nice. Now, this is a gap in the footage where we're coming back at a later episode, and what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to soften up these hard edges at the top of the walls and also in the corners is my goal here. And you can see in the background there a little bit that there's quite a few different pillars and test ideas. And one of the test ideas, or actually the basis for those ideas, was to take a bunch of scenery pieces that are reminiscent of stone or mostly stone and try to make columns out of them. And basically the way I made columns was to place them, opposite each other and rotate them around until you had a round structure, and then duplicate it and lift it as many times as necessary to get a column. So what you saw there is I was putting kind of some tops on the walls, and those were made out of the cider press pieces. And if you watched the Hidden Temple time lapse, I used those pieces a lot in the Hidden Temple. And again, it was in the Lost Garden ride where I first got the idea of implementing those. Now, we've jumped ahead in the footage quite a bit here, and I've done all the terraforming. I left the terraforming out of the time lapse because I didn't feel it was that interesting. But you can see now that the coaster station is completely enclosed. The chain lift and the drop are both kind of enclosed in the terrain and tunnels. And what I'm doing now is I'm painting it with I have a custom biome, and I'm painting it with the jungle leaves. It says grass, but it really looks like leaves and ground cover. So I'm painting that there, and I also kind of painted it going up the sides of the rock. And the way I did that, it kind of makes it look like the jungle brush is growing up the sides of the rock without using the ivy pieces, just by using the paint tools. And it's a very convincing effect. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. And if you want to see that process in more detail, leave me a comment and I'll figure out exactly which episode this was from, and I'll link you to it. And you could watch that episode in real time, or you could just look at the Whacky World playlist, and I've probably got an accurate title for it. The first 30 episodes or so, I wasn't really giving them very accurate titles, but then moving forward, I started to do it. And I've kind of gone back and renamed a few of them, so I am working on cleaning up that playlist just a little bit. Here we've moved into the coaster station, and I think I did this coaster station before I finished the Hidden Temple coaster station, or it might have been after. So actually, yeah, I think it was after. So in the Hidden Temple coaster station, I put these fish sculpture pieces kind of up in the corners because we don't really have like jaguars or other stonework that really fits the Aztec Mayan theme. So I decided that the fish was the least offensive statues that I could use. So again, to make this feel like it's part of the same culture, I repeated the fish up in the corners for the Lost Gardens in the coaster station, but I also knocked a few of them off, and there's some extra rubble and stuff in there to really make it look like this is kind of closed in and had some geological damage from like an earthquake or something. And again, that gives it the look and feel of it's old, it's ancient, it's been here for a long time. And I went in and added some lighting. I'm using the fairy tale dragon torches, but I'm sinking them into the walls until the wings disappear, and then it ends up looking a little bit more like a snake head. I'm thinking like a boa constrictor or some sort of Central South American large snake, and it's got the torch in it. Now we are adding the foliage at the top of the chain lift and also on the side of the drop. And this is what I did is I created 4 buildings. I used the 1 meter wood piece and I put those down to make it a building, and then I just built up foliage around that 1 meter piece, and basically made like little Lego bricks of foliage that I could pick up and drop in. And then after I drop them in, what I do is I go in and I edit the building, and I move individually any of the pieces that are like offensive or intersecting with the track, or if I don't like the way they landed with the path or anything like that. But I find it's a big time saver in placing this jungle foliage. Instead of trying to place every single piece individually, what I made is just 4 little buildings and using the 1 meter piece, and put the foliage around them, and then I can pick up one of those buildings, I can duplicate it, I can drop it anywhere I want, and then if I need to, I can edit it and move individual pieces and duplicate individual pieces. And so what I'm doing here is I'm making it look like the jungle foliage has somehow migrated up to the top here, kind of like I don't know, maybe some of the cliffs or things in like Hawaii, I guess. I've never actually even been to Hawaii, so I'm just going off of what I've seen in pictures. But the foliage and all the trees and stuff, they somehow managed to take hold really high up in some of the mountain areas. So I wanted to replicate that theme here. And just by adding this little piece right here, you'll see that this helps to bridge the gap between the pirate theme and the Lost Civilization theme of this area of Whacky World. So where the Lost Garden is the actual garden for the ride, like the actual double turn at the end around the fountain, that is more ancient civilization. As you move more towards where the chain lift is and the hill, the top of the hill here in the park, that is more piratey. There's more pirate stuff. So I wanted to kind of help the transition between those 2 thematic areas, and just a real simple way to do it was to take a pirate animatronic lookout and the pirate shack and the fire and a couple of the little jug pieces and put him up there as if he's part of a lookout station. And it also gives you, when you're on the ride, it gives you like a neat little thing to look at. You know, it's one of those things, I'm thinking kind of like, I don't know, Big Thunder Mountain or some of the more thematic rides at the Disney parks where you get up on top of the lift or whatever it is, and there's stuff up there and you're like, oh, that's cool, but it's like it doesn't really make sense that it's up there, but it's there. And here I'm moving down, and this is the queue for the ride, and originally it was just on a couple of sandstone pieces and it was very narrow, and I decided I wanted to make it a slightly larger plaza. And there you can see the pyramid. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking some of the pieces from the plaza in front of the pyramid and I'm reusing them. And that helps to keep the ancient civilization scenery consistent throughout this area of Whacky World by reusing elements and carrying elements from one place to another. It really helps to keep everything consistent and cohesive. And what I'm doing now, you can kind of see there's more dense foliage outside here. And so the idea is, as you move further back to where that pyramid is in the background, the foliage gets more dense and taller and less maintained, I guess would be the correct word. Now, as you move more towards the pirate area, I'm deliberately lowering the elevation of all of the brush and the trees and the foliage, because I want it to feel as if you're coming out of the jungle into this area where the jungle hasn't taken quite as much of a hold, or maybe the pirates themselves are clearing it away for their own city or their own little civilization and towns. I haven't built up the front of the pirate area very much, but I do want to add more buildings and things in there, so that's probably going to come later in Whacky World. Hopefully I can do it like in the month of November. I really underestimated how long it was going to take me to get this park done. Like I thought maybe like 60 episodes and I'd be done with the whole Planet Coaster series, and I'm now, I think, on episode 70, and I'm not even done with the pirate Lost Civilization jungle area. I haven't even done, like, I want to do a western area. I want to do an area of the park that's more traditional. I really want to fill up the entire map, and then I want to try to run the civilization if I can and have it run and work, but I don't know. So after dressing up the plaza and lowering the foliage, the elevation of the foliage slightly, now what I'm doing is I'm adding more foliage around the queue but I'm making this foliage more groomed and maintained as if it's part of the actual park. So when you walk through this area, there are areas that look very wild and just very typical to the type of region I'm trying to represent, but at the same time it is a theme park. So as you get more towards like the queues and the right exits, I want it to look more groomed and maintained, as if there's a lot of park maintenance that goes through and actually keeps that stuff kept and looking nice. And also the bushes that I used right by the ride entrance, those are more flowery and they help to emphasize the name of the Lost Garden. So it really helps to give you this look and feel of like, yes, it is a garden. You know, there's a garden in the ride, and then the outside by the queue is kind of gardeny and looks very nice and pleasant. And you can see we got some nice viewpoints there. And so now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of painting the terrain with those jungle leaves again and trying to get a feel for how it's all going to look. And then as a huge time saver, I just grabbed all that foliage and duplicated it. And now I'm just moving again a few of the pieces that need to be adjusted for the new position. And I'm just going to build up the foliage around the exit queue. And then as the video ends, you're going to see what the ride exit looks like kind of from the ground queue, and you'll see that it looks very nice. There's lots of foliage towards the park pathway. It looks like it's part of the park and it's groomed and it's maintained, but as it moves closer towards the plaza and the jungle scenery and on top of the hill, it is definitely getting a little bit more wild. So I don't have anything else to say. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear any comments or criticism or feedback, and let me know what you think. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time, and you have yourself a great afternoon.